Now, the UN Climate Change Conference currently holding in Glasgow has grabbed the headlines of the state of the world, the environment, in particular their climate. The COP26 summit is examining the roles that the various economic and business segments play in the warming up of the planet and the road to net zero emission. Let's bring the indigenous oil and gas producers into the conversation now as we turn to Karim, the CEO at Shoreline Energy in Nigeria. Karim joins us from our Abuja studios. Thanks for coming through on the show tonight, sir. We appreciate your time. What's the thinking within the Nigerian oil and gas industry regarding this energy transition being proposed by the developed countries?
Thank you, Bosim, for having me. The true position is this: the energy transition itself is a one-in-a-lifetime policy shift. And that is food for thought for the Nigerian oil and gas sector, like it is to all producers all over the world. It's a complete policy shift that's giving a deadline to emissions in entirety. Today, you could see from President Buhari's address to COP26, giving a finite date to Nigeria as a date of 2060. Zero emissions as well. So it's setting the mark that we need to start marching on and focusing on trying to get to that agenda.
So in a manner of speaking, President Buhari has given what you call a marching order to the industry. It says 2060. Those of you who are in the industry will now have to be part of this transition to net zero. But is energy transition has been pursued by developed economies? Is it inimical? Is it in the interests of frontier Africa producers such as Nigeria?
Look, it is a big problem, and I think it's a position that we all need to have a proper thought through in this process. Why? If you look at the global dynamics, let's look at numbers. Africa as a whole is about 15% of global population. Africa as a whole only attracts about 3% of energy and climate finance. Then think about this. Africa only emits about 1.5% of global emissions. So it will be an unfair position that Africa has been brought to the table to negotiate with the first world, the OECD countries, on the same basis on these global emissions. Look, the true position is this. If we as Africans have to engage on this level, the problems will come that energy, as it is we've seen today, energy prices are going through the roof. Look at global LNG prices. Look at oil prices today at over $55. And it's not going to stop there. This is going to be a major problem on the streets of Africa because we are not energy sufficient. And that is a watchword.
So give me your views on the ongoing climate change summit. The discussion around the change from fossil fuel to clean energy started well before the summit. Now those of you who are indigenous oil producers oil and gas producers are looking at this climate change. What would you like to see change? Some folks are saying, is this going to be a bad COP26 or a bad one or a good one?
Look, the reality is this. All the leadership have come around the table to have a discussion. I'm not sure it's a negotiation because the benchmark's been set. How much contributions do we have as an industry? Remember, a country like Nigeria, where 90% of our foreign exchange is derived from exportation and exploitation of oil and gas. That is a major problem. No one is talking about the transition fuels like gas. Think about it. There's about 18 African countries who are oil and gas producers. What are these economies going to do in the short, medium, and long term? This has got to be factors that's got to be put on the table to make sure we have a robust negotiations around these discussions of global emissions in making sure not only do we meet standards, but our economies are going to survive. Look, Africa has got over 66% of its population under the age of 30. That is a very youthful continent. If the transition emission standards that's been put in place by the global economies are to be met, then something has got to come in the financing and making sure there's enough financing in putting those transition positions together. Look, if we're looking today, look at gas. That's a transition fuel. If we're talking about wind, if we're talking about solar, these are very expensive investments. Where is the capital going to come from? A lot of African economies are already struggling post-pandemic. It's food for thought, because leadership has to come into play to think about the dimension where we're going as an industry and how we're going to deliver it in meeting global standards, but at the same time making sure our economies are thriving.
So yes, that's about the funding or the financing for this net zero emission, the energy transition. About $400 billion is what is said that Nigeria will most likely need between now and the year 2060. Where are we going to find the money?
That is the question that's begging for answers. That is a huge amount of money. If you look at our national earning from oil, then tabulate that with 400 billion that's needed in getting us to where we need to go and meeting international standards. We have to roll up our sleeves, and there's a lot of work to be done. But I'm going to say this. Nigeria is actually more of a gas country than an oil country. If you look at the Nigerian gas agenda, the 7-point agenda, Nigeria has over 210 TCF of gas. If we start focusing on that, that is a transition fuel in itself that would help, not only help us, but on the route to meeting these global standards that we're trying to get to. But at the same time, we will not shortchange the Nigerian people, the Nigerian economy, and those are very, very important areas that we need to think about. A lot of countries in Africa are finding a lot of gas. If you look at Senegal, look at Mozambique, what do you want these economies to do? Do you want them to put it aside? No. Someone has got to think through how the global financiers have got to see gas as a transition fuel, and it should not be put on the same scale as looking at coal and other dirty fuels, so to speak.
So what conversation is currently going on, Karim, right now amongst all of you who are the big names and practitioners, businessmen, investors in Nigeria's oil and gas industry, with the gas master plan on the table already? Is it the kind of a master plan that will take us to the future that we're now discussing at this UN climate convention?
It's a confusing one, but the true reality is this. Nigeria is actually in an advantaged position. We have a very youthful population, and our energy consumption is still very low, so it gives you the opportunity. And investment needs to go into gas, but where is that financing going to come from? The Nigerian financial sector is actually rising to the challenge and supporting a lot of our businesses in trying to get there. But we still need the wind of international finance to come to support the growth of the businesses in trying to deliver our transition route to get into that zero target that the president has put to the world today. But I'm going to say this. What is clear is in the industry, our focus is making sure we explore and exploit our God's given natural resources to benefit Nigeria, and also creating a trade to the world where Nigeria will become energy self-sufficient, and at the same time thinking about global agenda in meeting the zero climate target.
So here we are talking about our energy needs in Nigeria, quite very huge where we are right now. Do you think this is the right time for Nigeria to start making that change, looking at what we're already trying to put on the ground to bring power to the people, and just start making the transition on our own right now?
Remember, the decision on zero emission or emission in itself is not Nigeria's. We're part of a global community, and so we must work with a global agenda. And within that confines of the global agenda, we are working in the Committee of Nations. So this decision for Nigeria, leadership in Nigeria must see it, that we must try make decisions that suits our own economy and also benefits our people in the short term. In the medium term, working on a transition agenda, and that's where you see the 7-point, the gas agenda that the government has put in place, where we could try exploit our natural resources, utilizing our gas in trying to build that business and environment in growing the energy access in Nigeria. Look, this is what I will say. You look at the first world, the OECD countries, the industrialized nations. They have gone and are now focusing on their fourth industrial revolution. But in Africa, we've not even had our first. This is a problem. We cannot be benchmarked on the same standards because it will give us an unfair advantage in the long run. You cannot have a people who have polluted with their first industrial revolution, the second industrial revolution, the third, now looking at the third, but abating a transition process, but trying to force our agenda in that transition process. We understand the planet needs to be saved. What we need to do is work within our transition fuels, that is our gas, and then work with all the other possibilities, as in wind, solar, in trying to energize and making sure we meet the targets that Mr. President's put forward to COP26 today, 2060.
So far, tomorrow we'll be looking at the OPEC Plus meeting for November. What's your take on what the supply and demand metrics really are right now? If you put it side by side, where we're looking at Brent this evening, today, close to $85 a barrel.
Look, the situation where we'll find ourselves is all about this decarbonization theory. Remember, the world has just come through a very tight challenge in the pandemic. It's a global problem that's shown how connected we are in the world. Post-pandemic, this is the main challenge. The last 2 years, global oil and gas operators have not invested in additional production, in additional oil find. All most of the major companies globally have been doing is run and maintain facilities to keep production stable. What has happened post-pandemic? People are flying again, people are traveling again, and all of a sudden global consumption, as the pandemic's waning, global consumption of factories and industrial output is coming back and roaring again. The consumption is now outstripping supply. So here we're seeing the tightening in prices, and my forecast is prices will continue being tightened, and we're not too far away from $100 oil.
We thank you so much for your time, and do have a wonderful evening. Sir, Karim, CEO and Managing Director at Shoreline Energy Nigeria. Thank you.